we got a chance to learn to reskin our Taiko drums from Master Sensei Kenny Endo. Heavy duty racks had to be made to stretch the drum skin over the drum barrel. Depending on the size of the drum, you would need bigger lumber or smaller. You also need rope and a platform for the drum to sit on that's bigger than the drum surface. There's actually a lot of other tools that you'll see during the process, including the patterns for the skin surface, pegs, hammers, and so many other tools. The drum skins need to be soaked for about 24 hours. The skins will then be removed right before they're about to be sized and cut, and just drip dry just for a little bit. It's good to have several different teams doing different jobs. This team is removing the tacks off the drum skin, and we're only replacing the drum skins that need to be. We're not going to replace every single one. It's customary to put your name in the drum barrel. If you previously reskinned these drums, you might find your name in there already. Now we can clean the inside of the drum with the skin removed. Remove any stray tack pins that might have broken off the head. And using skewers or thicker toothpicks, the type that you serve fruit with, or maybe in cocktail drinks, dipping it into wood glue and then sticking it into the drum barrel, pounding it in there, breaking it off, and to fill in the holes. Then we need to make the surface around the holes that we filled in as flat as possible, scraping it or sanding it down, feeling it, making sure that it's as smooth as we can get it. If some of the old tacks are able to be saved, we try to straighten them out again, but most of the time we're throwing away the tacks and using new ones. Meanwhile, while that group was doing that, another group would have been preparing the skins to be measured and cut based on the drum size, using the pattern for that drum size for the skin to be marked and cut in a certain way. And that is one of the key things, is to have that pattern for that drum size. Each of those lines that she's drawing is where a cut is supposed to be on the skin, which later a rod will be put through it to help stretch the skin over the drum barrel. The skin must then be measured and marked to be able to cut out a circle that matches the pattern for the size of that particular drum. When measuring how big of a circle you should have to cut so that it matches the pattern that goes over the drum, is you have to consider how much excess skin needs to drape over the opening of that drum so it can be stretched on there and tacked on the drum. You're then going to cut out that circle based on the marks that you put on the skin. Sometimes you can use heavy duty scissors. Depending on the thickness of the drum skin, you might have to use an X-Acto knife. You're then going to put that circular cutout that you just did and put it on the pattern and draw the lines through the skin. You should be able to see the lines, and if the skin is too thick, then you will have to use this other method. If you're not able to see through the skin to mark it, you will have to use this method where you put the pattern over the skin and then pound a nail through each end of the line to mark where you're supposed to draw the line, and then you remove the pattern and then draw the line on the skin. Or you can put the pattern underneath the whole skin, mark the circle and the lines if you can see through the skin enough, and then you can do your cutting after you've marked everything. With the smooth side of the skin facing up, insert the metal pegs into the cutout slots. You should see the ends of the pegs as you see in this video. These will later be used to stretch the skin over the drum barrel. The skins with the rods in it will then be re-soaked for a little while before stretching it onto the drum. After about 15 to 30 minutes, before adding the soaked skin onto the drum barrel, we're going to wipe off some of the water. With the smooth side up, we place the skin over the drum barrel that has been centered over the stretching rack, as you see in this video. Using a rope tied to the corner of the rack, we can start looping the rope over onto the pegs on the skin and loop it back down onto the rack, as you see. And you continue to go around the whole skin until it is even. And it is also helpful to have people hold the skin down so you're not moving the skin too much into the initial direction that you started in. Otherwise, you will have to adjust, tying down the skin more later on. So the rope should be a little taut, but not too tight. When you have a smaller drum, you can use smaller rope, smaller rack, smaller sticks to tighten the rope later. This rack has notches underneath, if you can see underneath the board. That'll help the rope from slipping as you're tightening. You may repeatedly need to adjust the skin on top of there, adjust the rope tension, and then when everything looks good, tuck in the skin up into the inside like you see. After the rope is all tied down, you need to add more tension to it by, for this size drum, use a bigger PVC pipe. You will wind it between the two ropes the way that you see. If you have a smaller drum, then you can use the bachi, the Taiko sticks. Once you check, make sure that the tension is right. The more experienced person, like you see Kenny here, he's going to go and check and try to adjust it using this block with a mallet, a wooden mallet, and he can tell how much more tension it needs, how to adjust it, how much more times to wind it around, and maybe even only wind it up more to give it more tension on one side of the drum or on a certain ends of the drum. By now it's very tight, and to be able to adjust the PVC pipe to keep turning it is very hard. So now you know that the tension is really strong, it's really tight. Then you're gonna check it again and check to see what areas might need less tension or more tension. Hit it with the mallet maybe again with the block and adjust it some more. An experienced person like Kenny would know. For the rest of us, it's probably a guessing game. Now after adjusting it, he's having them tighten it up again. So it's a whole process of trying to get the right tension on all sides and adjusting it here and there, and then adjusting it again, and until you get to a point where it's pretty good and you're satisfied with it. These short wooden pegs are added in there because as this thing dries, it's going to be harder to take off. So this is a spacer in there to help with the process of removing it later. We're gonna let the drum skins dry for a few days, come back and check on it, but also do the same process to the other side of the drum if the drum needed to be reskinned on both sides. Some drums were only skinned on one side, reskinned on one side. So, but we'll come back in 7 days to finish the whole rest of the process. So after a few days to a week of drying, you want to re-soak the skins again. You're only going to re-soak the top part of the skin and the inside and outside. You don't want it to be too high or deep of water where it's going to soak the area where you're going to tack the drum into the drum barrel. The water needs to be maintained to be a warm temperature just from the tap water, not boiling. As it cools, you want to add more hot water after you have drained some of the water so that you don't make the water too deep. In about 1 to 2 to maybe 3 hours, the skin will be ready depending on how thin or thick the skin is. As you're waiting for the skins to soak, you can get the stands ready with the hydraulic jacks. Get the platform ready. Make sure all the hydraulic jacks are the same height. Put the plates over it, and then put the platform that's going to go on top of the jacks. And this is all sitting on the frame that we used before to initially stretch the skins onto the drum barrel. Make sure you have enough rope, more than twice as much as you needed before, because now we have the hydraulic jacks underneath it also. And this time we'll be going over from the stretching rack up to the stretching rods twice. You also need some PVC pipes or bocces that are big enough to put between the ropes to turn it, to make it tighter, and then your mallet. Before we put the skin on, we're going to rub some candle wax on the drum rim. When the skin is ready, we're going to towel it dry really quickly and then bring it over. Put it onto the drum barrel. We're now going to start the stretching process. Tie the rope to the thick frame at the bottom. String the rope up to the top of the rod that's attached to the skin and wind it back down to the frame and keep doing that. Make sure people are holding down the skin so that it does not move around too much as you're tying this down. You don't want it to be too tight as you're tying this down, as it will start to slide the skin more to the first side that you were tying down. So it's really important for people to be holding the skin down so it stays as even as possible. You then have to tie the second rope on, following the same path as the first rope. Once the second rope is done, we're going to move on and add in the PVC pipes or the bocce. Take note where you're putting the bocce or the PVC pipe in to twist the rope together to create more tension. And your expert is going to tell you it's about 2 to 3 times you're turning it, and he's going to check the spacing, make sure the skin is on evenly, and decide from then how many times more to turn the PVC pipe to stretch it on there more. He's watching also to make sure the skin is not tearing. Your expert may tell you to turn certain PVC pipe tighter in certain areas only and not in all areas, knowing that one side needs to be tightened more than another. You're then going to go with a wooden block and wooden mallet and tap down firmly each peg to give it a little bit more stretch, and then they're going to adjust it again one more time. They're tapping the skin, and that's how they can check to listen for what side of the skin might need to tighten a little bit more. You can hear the tone of the drum. They're going to start jacking it up evenly on all four sides at the same time. And the expert will tell you how many cranks to do. Tapping the skin to check for the right pitch, make sure, see how much more it might need to be tightened. Gonna crank it up some more, then tap it with the wooden mallet, with the wooden block again, and then we're gonna tighten it again, crank it up a little bit more. You just keep repeating this process until you get the right pitch, the right tone from the drum. Next, somebody needs to get onto the drum skin and walk on it, digging your heels into the drum skin, constantly stepping for 5 minutes, moving around all over. We're trying to fine-tune the drum skin and then stretch it a little bit more. So for 5 minutes you walk around on it, and then you're going to jack it out 2 times while the person's on the skin. Using this 90-degree angle tool that fits a pencil in it, we're going to draw a circle around the edge of the drum skin to mark a point where we're going to measure and then use those measurements and lines to start drilling holes. Using this tape measure, they're going to mark every inch on the existing line that was previously drawn. Using a small drill bit, smaller than the tack pin, you want to drill a hole on the line every inch where it's marked, about a ½ an inch deep. Then carefully tap the tack into each hole, trying not to bend the pin at all. Someone with carpentry skills may have an easier time pounding the tack into the drum. It also depends whether the drum barrel, if it's a harder wood or a softer wood. After finishing the first roll of tacks, you can remove the rope and then remove the metal pegs. You can draw a second line above the first line and mark every inch above and in between each existing tack in a kind of triangle pattern. Or you can guess about where you're going to be pounding that tack in and drill a hole there which would be slightly above and between each tack. You're then going to continue pounding the rest of the tacks in the new holes you've just drilled, so that it's kind of in a triangular pattern like you see in the video there. If any of the tacks get bent, if it's too bent, take it out and don't use it. Try again. Make one last round when you're done and make sure all the tacks are pounded in good, and then you're done. That's it. Special thank you to Kenny Endo and his Taiko group for teaching us how to reskin these drums. Also, special thank you to Bishop Ren and Reverend Quinn for allowing us the space to do this reskinning at Shingon Mission of Hawaii, and to do the blessing for these drums.